The first game up, Hawks Wizards, like I said, it's counting very heavily on some of that regression kicking in tonight. Um, I like the idea of Washington's offense to come back down to earth. And obviously, I like the idea of these back-to-backs going under after the first game went over. We didn't see a particularly fast-paced game. We saw a lot of three-point shooting in that fourth quarter as well, which helped it go over the number and only just scraped there in the end. But for me, it's largely about Atlanta potentially being able to slow things down, Washington not wanting to run and gun either, because that's going to be the best way for Atlanta to be efficient offensively. So we've seen the Wizards enjoy half-court basketball in these games, and I think that's exactly what we get here. It's going to be a pretty important division game for both teams as well. They're both live to win the division technically, so I don't think we have to worry too much about this one being an up and down affair. I think it's just going to come down to whether the defenses can get enough to prevent them from being too efficient offensively. We're not asking for a lot to fall under such an inflated total either. So my number for this game came out at 229. So I have a pretty decent market edge here in terms of my projections. And like I said, I just feel as though hopefully the bottoming out starts for Washington today. For us to get a pretty comfortable win here. Let's dive into the more interesting game from a betting perspective, at least in terms of what our investments say. Cleveland at Miami. Now, obviously, I got a pretty bad number here on the Cavs. I got -1.5 last night. That was before we got news that Darius Garland would be questionable. Obviously, I wouldn't have jumped in so early if I thought there was even the potential for that, but a bit of an unexpected blindsiding, which has happened pretty regularly in the NBA this season for a lot of guys. So, we can't complain too much. It is frustrating. He didn't go through shoot around, but that doesn't necessarily mean he won't play. We've seen that a couple of times this season where a player sits shoot around but still plays. Obviously, if he plays, I think the Cavs go back to favoritism here anyway, so we're not going to lose any market value. If he's out and this climbs any higher, I'm going to buy more on Cleveland. I make this Cavs plus somewhere between Cavs +1.5 +2 with Garland out. So if we start catching anywhere around 3.5 or better, I have to play Cleveland again at that point. And this becomes a game where we have a lot of investment in. Like I said already, on the Miami Heat team total under as well for a pretty big play for me there. That's already 2 units that, again, could still get higher. The Heat offense against very good defenses is not good. The Cavs defense against very bad offenses, we spoke about last show, is very good. When they've played teams bottom 6 in effective field goal percentage, which Miami is one of those, they've held teams under their team total 10 of the 12 times that they've played. The only 2 times it went over was the San Antonio Spurs. Both those games were over 100 possessions each, which is way above what Cleveland plays at anyway. So the first game, these two teams shot at 50% and still went under the full game, still went under the team total. I think that they're probably due for some regression in terms of shooting the basketball here. And it might even be a slower paced game than last game, which was 92 possessions apiece. I project it to be 89, 90 possessions each for this one. So like I said, a slower paced game with offensive regression probably due. Every matchup under the sun works in our favor here in terms of Miami's offense not being able to execute against an elite defense. So for that reason, like I said, it's already a 2-unit play, and I'm probably going to consider adding a little bit more to my position here. This is just one of those situations where everything lines up in terms of model projections, situational positions in terms of teams playing back-to-back in the way that they have, and of course the on-court matchups, which I look at, and everything screams it being unders as well, and Miami struggling. So this is going to be the biggest position we have this season, is this Cleveland-Miami game. It'll certainly make for interesting viewing. Look forward to watching it and jumping in the Discord and watching everyone lose their minds when Miami drops 30 points in the first quarter again. But don't be surprised if that happens. Do not be surprised if that happens at all. It does not necessarily mean we're in a bad position either, as you saw last game. So those are those two. One more position I have for today on the Raptors-Lakers. I'm kind of mad that the Raptors support has been as aggressive as it has been. I should have expected it. This was always a Toronto spot. We're basically at my number now, so I haven't got involved in that from a side perspective. Did go back on a Lakers unders though. We spoke last time a couple of shows ago in our homework review about the Lakers being an unders team. We've profited from that already. Hopefully we can get another situation where we profit out of it. Under 225 tonight. D'Angelo Russell coming back obviously gives them a little bit more offense and potentially a little bit less defense. I don't know if you necessarily lose too much there when swapping D'Lo for Dennis Schroeder specifically. But it just comes down to the style of these two teams. Toronto's going to slow this thing down, force LA into half-court sets on offense and trust that they can get the stops, which I think they can do. The way they pack the paint, the size and length that they have there, keeping the Lakers off of the offensive glass, I think they'll do that pretty well, which, you know, means a lot of one-and-done possessions both ways. I think the Lakers can do the exact same the other side, because if this does become a half-court basketball game, we've seen time and again how Toronto can struggle to generate good looks offensively, and I think that might be the case again tonight. So my projections for this game came out at 2-2-1 flat. So about 4 points of market edge on that 225. And I still think it might even be lower than that. This might be one of those games where, you know, we see a scoreline maybe 105, 100. I wouldn't be surprised at all if that's the case. And, you know, again, this is a game where even if both teams shoot 50% from the field, I think as long as neither team is allowing the other to run in transition, and that's probably the point of emphasis, I think, from both head coaches, it'll still probably fall under this 225 as well. So this is more about ensuring that both teams do, in fact, make a point of getting back in transition defensively and forcing half-court sets. And if that's the case, I'm going to be very, very confident in our position. And we should see that in the first quarter showing up as well. You know, I think we'll know pretty quickly if we are going to be on the right side of this one, regardless of where the market closes, but from just a matchup perspective specifically. So those are my bets for today. Like I said, I still might get a little bit more involved in the Cleveland game as well. I wouldn't necessarily rule that being out of the case just yet.